Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Hari Om Tat Sat.
Hari Om Tat Sat.
Okay, kindly mute your microphones. So yesterday we had done the Shankara's commentary on the verse number 32. Atmaupamyena sarvatra samam pasyati yorjuna sukham va yadiva dukkham sa yogi paramo mataha. So the one he was basically trying to hint at a balanced vision of a sadhaka or an aspirant who has established himself at a much higher echelon in terms of his equanimity, his ability to all the time focus on that Atma Tattva and apply it in his Vyavahara during his Vyuthana Dasa. And this verse is an extension and elaboration on the previous verse, which mentions that Sarva Bhutastito Yomang Bhajatyeka Tvamastitaha Sarvatha Vartamanopi Sa Yogi Mai Vartate. Is already clarified that this is the phalam of a person. These are all kind of linked to each other. So Yomang Pasyati Sarvatra Sarvang Cha Mai Pasyati Tasyaham Na Pranashyami Sa Cha Me Na Pranashyati. So starting with that, the 30th verse, the one who sort of during his yogic meditative state, he is able to see my presence. He's able to see during his meditative state that everything that he sees in the external world is ultimately dissolved in me. I am the foundation of it. I'm the substratum of all these realities. And during his Bhuthana Dasa, during his Vyavahara Dasa, when he interacts with the external realities, he sees my signature everywhere. He sees my presence everywhere. And because he's able to do that, I shall never be an external object for me, nor he shall be ever an external object for me, nor I shall ever be an external object for him when it comes to perception, saying thereby that we shall remain intimately one and the same thing, the pure consciousness. Okay? And now, in this particular thing, he's virtually now extending it to show how the Jnani makes an application. How does he apply this Tattvadarshana, this particular Tattvadarshita that he has, this equal vision he has? How does he apply it in his daily behavior? What Shankaracharya explained. He looks at something which is good for him, and he wants everybody to experience that because he wants everybody to be happy, because he knows what is Ishta for him is good for everybody. And what is bad for him is bad for everyone. So what he doesn't like, he shall not inflict that experience on others. Sukham va yadiva dukkham sa yogi paramo mataha. And that kind of a yogi, in the previous verse he has already mentioned that the person who all the time sees me as one and the same every way that he travels and interacts with, and even though he may be in any particular mental disposition, either like a Yajnavalkya or like a Janaka or like a Dattatreya, he may be anywhere doing anything, but all the time he is having the benefit of a yogi consciousness. So he may be doing a job, he may be married, he may be single, he may be doing a job, he may be doing a business. But during these external activities, his connectivity with me is not lost. He doesn't lose sight of the presence, my presence everywhere. And that he's just a part of it. He fully recognizes and benefits from it. And as we had discussed yesterday, Madhusudana Saraswati will now take it to the next level. And there's a lot of Vedantic discussion here. Atma eva upamyam. He compares his own self with everything. Upama tena atma drishtantena. He always brings his own self into the refrain, He has that sadrishya jnana. I'm a human being, and all these people are also human being. I shouldn't demand any special treatment. All the people should have the same treatment. He has that sort of a thing. Tena atmadrishtantena sarvatra prani jate sukham va yadiva dukkham samam tulyam yah pasyati swasya anishtam yatha na sampadayati evam parasya anishtam yo na sampadayati pradvesa sunyatvat. Because he doesn't have any dvesa, he doesn't have any aversion towards anyone, he doesn't have any raga or attachment towards himself. So he shall not do something in his own interest which he cannot share with others. I am reminded of a story long back. There used to be a spiritual person, and I'll sometimes carry some gifts to him. And in front of me, that fellow, of course, will not be eating too much, he'll be mostly hungry, but when I present him with sweets or anything, he'll just distribute it amongst everybody around him, and he'll be left with just one piece. And I'd say that I brought it for you because you are hungry. He said, yeah, but all these people are here. How do I take it? That is the kind of spiritual attitude, all embracing attitude of love, born out of an understanding that all of us are, in fact, one reality. Despite the fact that we have different bodies and stuff like that, we are just one reality. We are projections of one unity. We have become multiple. That is only at an apparent level. At a fundamental paramarthika level, at a ultimate level, all of us do not have our individual existences, which can be seen as distinct and separate from that unified reality called Satya or Brahman or Satya Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So the person who swasya anishtam yathana sampadayati, the way he shall not do something which is harmful to him, evam parasya anishtam yo na sampadayati pradvesa sunyatvat, same way he shall not do that which might affect others. So let's imagine that he cooked something and it doesn't taste very good. He is not going to avoid taking it and serve it to others. No, that he'll not do. If he doesn't like it, he'll not give it to anyone else. Ebam swasya ishtam yatha sampadayati, the way something is good that he does for himself, tatha parasya ishtam yah sampadayati raga sunyatvat. He has no special attachment to himself. So let's imagine that he knows a certain technique of meditation to attain peace of mind. And he finds there are few people who are very disturbed. He has learned this trick by a lot of sadhana, a lot of effort, a lot of hard practice over long years. But is he miserly when it comes to sharing that secret with others? No, he wants others to avoid the depression that he had passed through, and how this particular meditation helped him sort of overcome that. So he would like to spread it. That is how it is. Raga Sunyata Sa Nirvasanataya Tamana Yogi Brahma Visreshto Mataha. If you compare this, but who has a tulya drishti towards himself and others, because an understanding fundamental ultimate reality, unity, become peaceful, who can do a nirod and heal happiness, or that you are in a deep level, you have almost kaivalya prapti, but that sutra is always there. What was that? Tachidreshu pratyantarani sanskaribhya. Because of previous impressions, it's quite possible that even if you have reached a almost penultimate state of liberation of the self, because of some appearance of old impressions, old habits, the vestigial remains of some habits, certain thoughts, which are hidden in your subconscious. Should they arise again, the benefit that you are enjoying will get diluted and you will lose it. And then you will have again vikshepa. Vikshepa is what? Distraction. The mind will again start getting activated. Therefore, to have a summary end to all this, what do you need? You need vasana kshaya, end of desires. You must understand, sublimate, get rid of, dismiss, and discard. Vasanas are what we will explain. He's explaining it beautifully. We'll go word by word. So vasana kshaya, thinning down of your desires. So you have to sort of starve them. not through a process of self-denial, but through understanding. Here in the Vedantic thing, we don't torture ourselves. We understand them, and we understand them so well that they become meaningless for us. Desires will be there, they're biochemical processes. They will trouble us. But we have to have the maturity and patience to watch them. They will appear, they will do some mischief, and they will subside again. But when our understanding becomes fundamentally, you know, sort of enshrined in our consciousness, we are fully established in that truth, then the desires slowly lose their grip over us. That is what he's saying. Vasana kshaya, kyanam akramam abhyasaya. So you don't do it one after the other, but you do the practice all three, tattva jnana, mononasa, and vasana kshaya. You have to do it yugapat. Yugapat means what? Simultaneously. And why you need to do it simultaneously? Because they're interconnected, interdependent, and mutually reinforcing. These three great enemies or devils or obstructions in our path to self-realization. What are they? One is tattva jnana abhava. But this is, if you don't have tattva jnana, there is a problem. There is ignorance. Because if you have ignorance, you'll have a lot of desires, because you'll confuse yourself with your emotions, with your thoughts, with your body, and then you will identify with them, and you will have cravings. And if you have tattva jnana, vasana kshaya is easy. And if you have vasana kshaya, then mononasa, the mind becomes peaceful. That also becomes easy. So they are kind of interdependent, mutually reinforcing, and they are dialectically kind of linked with each other. And that's a very beautiful thing that we'll discuss today. So, abhyasaya mahaprayatna astheya ityarthaha. So therefore, one has to do a lot of serious perseverance, hard work, persistent effort. You go on hammering it. One of our acharyas, the Maharaj in Kailash Ashram, keeps giving that example, that one of the brahmacharis sort of decided that he'll break a big stone and make use of it to create a pedestal. But the stone piece was a huge one. So it had rolled from the mountain, and it was a huge one. And he started hammering it. And people were saying, oh, you think you can manage it? He said, I'm trying. And people thought he's quite an idiot. He's trying to do it. So, he walked at it for 2-3 days. And then on the third day, after kind of hammering it for about 500 or 600 times, it cracked and became 2 pieces. And then he could actually break them into small boulders, and then he used it. They became kind of chips. They used it to, work it for creating they were constructing a platform, and it was used. So that's how you have to go on hammering on this particular requirement. And if you go on hammering, it has its impact. It becomes visible after some time. Right? Tatra idam sarva dveta jatam advitiye chidananda atmani mayaya kalpitatvat musa eva atma vivekaha paramartha satyaha satchidananda advayo aham asmiti jnanam tattva jnanam. So what is tattva jnana? Before I explain this, I want to bring into our discussion a question I received from a bright young man from Bengal. He listens to on the YouTube, and he sent me a message yesterday. He says, Swamiji, how can you compare a bubble with the ocean? The bubble is just a tiny amount of water. The ocean is huge. And how can you compare a spark of fire with a whole big fire, a bonfire? Where the bonfire is going to burn you to death, the spark of fire might fall in your shirt and make a small punch, a small hole, but can't damage you much. How can you compare? How can Jiva be Ishvara? How can you have Jiva, Brahma, Aikya Jnana? It's completely contradictory. Yes, it's contradictory if we try to see Jiva and Brahma as material entities. If we see the bubble and the ocean as material entities, which they are, then we would not be able to treat them as one and the same, because the bubble is a tiny drop of water, which is blown with some air inside. Similarly, a spark of fire is just insignificant compared to the whole flame or the whole bonfire that you see, which has tremendous ability to generate heat and damage. However, if you treat the bubble as H2O water and treat the ocean as H2O water, fundamentally, whether it's a bubble or it's a pond or it's a well or it's the ocean, what is it? Is it not water? It is water. Now, the pot space, maybe it has, let's imagine that it is 60 ml, it's a small pot. If it's a larger pot, it's an ink pot, 60 ml. Maybe it's a bigger pot, okay, 1 liter. That is the space. That is the amount of space. The volume of the space inside the pot is maybe 1 liter, 2 liters. On the other hand, when you talk about space, the whole cosmic space, do you have any number for it? No. How do you equate them? We don't equate the volume of the pot space with volume or the size of the cosmic space. We are comparing, this is Bhaga Tyaga Lakshana or Jahada Ajahada Lakshana. What you do is remove a bit from both and see what is common between them. Now, can we compare a boy and a girl? A girl can become a mother, a boy cannot be. A boy will be different genetically, and functions are different. Biologically, they have similarities and dissimilarities. But let's look at both of them and say, are they both human? Do they have consciousness? Yes. So what is the difference? Even between human beings and animals, is there consciousness? We are conscious, they are conscious. Their consciousness is less reflective from a Vedantic standpoint. It reflects that Chaitanya less, and therefore this Purana, or the illumination of the consciousness in them, is less prominent in an inanimate object compared to a plant or a tree, and this becomes even more vibrant and more evident in case of an animal or a living being, and then even more evident in case of a human being. However, the inanimate, the stone, the river, everything, there is consciousness. But that doesn't reflect that particular surface. But the nature of that thing is such that it doesn't reflect the consciousness enough to appear as conscious as we are. Now, the water in a dirty drain, the water in a very fragrant glass of juice, or the water or liquid that is there in a scent, and the water in the ocean, the water in a sweet water lake, the water in the ocean which is salty, they are all what? They are all H2O. Okay, 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen give rise to a certain molecule, we call it water. And they are all same. Yes, the characteristics are different, their qualities are different, their taste is different, their fragrance is different, and the medicinal qualities or harmful qualities are also different. The qualities are different, but what are they fundamentally? Like the pot space, when you fill it with rice, it is not only pot space, it is also pot rice space because it's filled with rice, isn't it? But when you take out the rice, what is there? It's only space. This space, if you break the pot, if it's an earthen pot, what does that, where does that go? Does it have an existence? Was it any different from that cosmic space? No. We have limited it. We have given it a certain contour, and we are calling it a pot space. Having explained that, let's come back to this sentence. What is Tattva Darsana now? Having discussed that from a Vedantic point of view, in what sense? We are not saying that a human being is equivalent to Lord Krishna. Who are we to talk? He is the supreme Lord of the universe. So he has the Maya Upadhi, with that magical power, the Brahman has appeared as Bhagavan. In whole of Bhagavad Gita, nowhere it is said that Krishna Uvacha. It is written Arjuna Uvacha. Anywhere you read Vasudeva Uvacha, Krishna Uvacha, no. Only one sentence written everywhere, Bhagavan Uvacha. Nowhere it is written Krishna Vacha, because he is not a human being. He is Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. So he is the Lord of the universe. There is no doubt about it. Lord Shiva and everything, they are all modifications of that supreme consciousness. These are names and forms. Okay? So the Vedantin sort of goes beyond the reality of Ishvara to a reality of Brahman, where the names and forms are dropped and the supreme consciousness is thought of without taking the name. But the moment you want to meditate on it, you shall have to accept name and form. You cannot meditate on the Brahman as such. That is why Pranabhatasya Vachakaha. That is what the Yoga Sutra said. That the minimum you have to use the symbol of Om. That is the Vachaka. Vachya, actually Brahman is Avachya. So Yoga Sutra said Pranabhatasya Vachakaha. So meditate on the Pranava. Okay, so having discussed that, let's come back. Tatra idam sarvam dveta jatam. All that we see, this phenomenal reality, is dveta jata. Dveta jata means what? Born out of a dualistic perception of things. This dveta is imposed by us. The Ganges is there. We are calling it, this is Prayag Ghat, this is Banaras Ghat, this is Calcutta Ghat. It's all Ganges. It's all Ganges, isn't it? We are giving these names. Similarly, this Dveta Jatam, Advitiya Chidatmani, Chidanandatmani, that Chidananda Rupa, Anandatmani, that Supreme Self, which is Ananda Rupa, Mayaya, by magical, that is a delusion, that is a projection. Maya Kalpitatvat is imagined through projection, through superimposition called Nusa Eva. So therefore it is false. Maya is neither Sat nor Asat nor Sadasat. Please remember this. If you say Sasa Vishana, the horn of a hare, the hare doesn't have a horn. So if I say hare's horn, then what do you say? Or I'll say hornet's mustache. What was it? It doesn't exist, right? That is Tucha, that is Asat. But if I say Maya, it is neither Sat, 100% is not true. It's not 100% false. There is a rope, therefore you see the snake. So the snake is not 100% false. There is something. That something, that idam, that looks like a snake, that is not false. Snake part is false. That part is true. But that is a rope. But we don't see that rope part. We see the snake part. We impose it. But that part is true. So it's not fully false. It's not fully true. Nor is it sadasat, a mixture of falsity and truth. That also we cannot say. That is why Maya is called anirvachaniya, difficult to explain in words. Okay, kalpitatvat nusha eva atma atma eva ekaha. That is the final truth. Atma, that self, the Brahman, that itself is one. Paramartha satya, that is the final ultimate truth. Satchidananda Advayo aham asmiti jnanam tattva jnanam. And therefore, when you start with Tattvamasi, aham brahmasmi comes finally. Of course, I was in a Vaishnava ashram. They strongly object to that. But aham brahmasmi is not a sentence said by Shankaracharya or any guru. This is written in the Upanishad, in Veda. This is a Veda Vakya. And therefore, aham brahmasmi, what means? You are God. No, doesn't mean that. It means that the consciousness which is reflected in us is the same consciousness at a cosmic level, which becomes Ishvara. It's the same consciousness. There's no difference. And it's very difficult to accept initially. But the more and more you meditate on it, it takes a little time, but the truth blossoms in the consciousness after some time. Okay? So, aham asmiti jnanam tattva jnanam. That is that tattva jnana. What is that tattva jnana? All that we see is phenomenal, not real, not unreal. Neither real and unreal. What is it? It's anirvachaniya. Murshaiva, therefore it is ignorable. It's almost like false. What is true? Atma eva. That self alone is true. And that self is not different from me. Aham brahmasmi. Therefore, I am no different from that ultimate truth and reality and bliss. And therefore, that is tattva jnana. This tattva jnana is not the way we No, there is a pencil, there is a camera, there is a telephone. No, it's not like this. It is not Vishayatvena Jnaya. It is Jnana Swarupa, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. It is not different. So the Jnaya, the Jnata, and the Jnana, they all dissolve into one unified reality at the level of Brahma Jnana. Difficult to conceptualize initially. As we progress and meditate on it, that truth slowly appears. Okay, Tattva Jnanam. Then we'll understand the other thing. Pradeepa, Pradeepa Jwala Santanavad, Vriddhi Santana Rupena, Parinama, Parinama Manantaha, Antakarana Drabyam. Okay, now what happens in our brain? You just think about your mind. We are thinking one thought, that thought again manifests, that thought again manifests. So, like you see a flame, is there actually a flame? There is nothing called a flame. There's one flame is going up, then there is another flame going on, right? There is a pravaha, there is a santana. That is what I'm saying. Pradeepa jwala santanavad. Vritti santana rupena. This consciousness, this manas. There is a vritti santana. There is a flow of thoughts, of consciousness. Flow of modification of the mind. Okay? So, just give me a second. So this flow of consciousness, and this flow parinama rupena, parinama manam antakarana drabyam. He's now defining what is manas. That parinama manam antakarana drabyam, that particular material which takes the form of a steady flow of thoughts, a steady flow of consciousness modifying itself again and again. Okay? Mananatmakatvat mana iti uchyate, because it's always in a mode of thinking. Mananatmakatvat. Can you think about a mana as an object the way you see this pencil? Okay, this is an object. Can you see the manas like this? No. You do an inference. You infer I have a mind by recognizing that you have a lot of thoughts, right? And because you have a lot of thoughts, you infer that there is something where these are happening, and that is my mind. That is the mana. Mananatmakatvat mana iti uchyate. Tasya nasa. Why is he doing all this? Tattva Jnana has defined. Now he's trying to explain what is mano nasa. How do you put an end to the mind? How do you silence the mind? Very complicated thing. Kindly pay a little attention. Tasya nasa namo vritti rupa parinamam paritajya sarva vritti virodhina nirodhakarena parinamaha. What is this mononasa? What is this mononasa? Tasya nasa, manasaha nasha. The destruction or termination of that mind is what? Does it mean that it's like this is the mind and I'm going to break it to pieces, hammer it to, nothing, tiny particles? No, manas doesn't exist like that. It's not a physical object that you can smash and destroy it. So what is mananasa? He's saying, let's look at it. Vritti rupa parinamam paritajya. It has a tendency to manifest itself in different forms through different thoughts. That is the vritti rupa parinama. It manifests itself, gets metamorphosed from one form to other. Like you feel sadness because there are some sad memories coming to your mind. You feel elated because somebody is hitting a six, you're watching a cricket match, or you meet an old friend, or you saw a beautiful flower, or you saw a small bunch of children playing. You're full of happiness. This mind is entertaining different objects of perception, processing them, has different thoughts, remembers a few things, makes a masala out of it. It's a admixture of memory and objects of perception and some emotional, some cognitive aspect, some cognitive aspect. Together, there is some kind of a psychological makeup. And this makeup is undergoing constant changes. That is the vritti parinama rupa. Having abandoned that, Sarvabrutti nirodha, sarvabrutti virodhina, by stopping. So there are two aspects to this mononasa. Please pay a little kind attention to it. There are two aspects. One is putting an end, parityaga. Parityaga of what? Viparinama, vritti parinama mana rupa. Again and again, it's assuming different kinds of forms. Put an end to it. That's number aspect one. So you are terminating a process of modification of your conscious mind, which is assuming different makeups based on what kind of thoughts and experiences it is entertaining. Number one. Number two, what? He's explaining further. And then he's saying, Nirodha karena parinamaha. So there is a nirodha, that is abandonment. Okay, abandonment of what's going on and blocking it, preventing what might happen. Two aspects: stop what's happening and prevent what could happen again. Like you have these management windows, right? So you if there are certain things which are unnecessary, you weed them out of your life, and what is desirable, bring them in. What is urgent, attend to it, and what needs to be urgently removed, remove it urgently. Similarly, you do prevention and mitigation of certain problematic modifications of the mind through serious attention, paying serious attention and removing them. That's the kind of addictive behavior of the mind. Then preventing relapse of the mind into any future modification, right? So mitigation and prevention. That is what disaster management is all about. So you have mitigation and prevention, or what is called risk reduction. Nirodha karena parinamaha. And this is a new parinama. What is this parinama? What is the outcome? The outcome is that we shall not allow old ways of functioning, which will produce a few useless counterproductive outcomes, because we are interested in Atma Sakshatkara, and we shall prevent any further modification, and therefore we have an outcome. We have a results matrix. What is that outcome or result that you are achieving? The result you are achieving is peace of mind. You are not allowing the mind to jump around. That is mononasa rupa parinama. Purva paramarsha. Then he will now explain what is vasana. Mononasa is done. Now vasana. Vasana kya we will discuss. How to terminate desires. Purva paramarsham antarena. Purva para paramarsha antarena. You don't do any vichara. Okay, so you're going somewhere and somebody says, remember your school days, somebody says, would you like to go? And there's a beautiful talk this is being delivered by a great professor who has come from this and this university. You have an urgent presentation to make the next day. Then this friend says, come, everyone is going. Exam ho jayega, we'll work at night. Let's go to that talk. Then you accompany him or her and you go. Then have a cup of tea and you relax and you go and socialize and you listen to the talk. It may not be very serious, but you have lost 3 hours. By the time you're back at home, it's 9 p.m. You are left with another 2 hours before you go to sleep. Early morning presentation. You sort of blame yourself. Why did I waste my time? But the time is gone. So what happens here is that Purvapara paramarsham antarena, without taking into account, Purvapara paramarsha is vichara, some consideration, without allowing yourself the benefit of what is right and a consideration of pros and cons. Sahasa utpadyamanasya krodhadi vritti visesasya hetuhu chittagataha sanskara visesho vasana. Is a beautiful definition of vasana. What is vasana? He's saying, break these words one by one. Purva para paramarsham antarena, without the benefit of consideration of pros and cons. Sahasa utpadyamanasya, and suddenly something appears in you. What can appear in you? Some kind of a psychological thing. Okay, some mental formation. What is it? Krodhadi. You may be angry, you may be too happy, you may have a desire for something or the other happens. You may be angry, you may be sad, you may have terrible craving for something. Krodhadi. Vritti visesasya. These kinds of modifications certainly happen in your mind without allowing your intellect to do any kind of analysis of what is the cause, what are the pros and cons if you engage in that sort of a mental makeup or formation or modification. Hetuhu chittagata sanskara vishesha. But why does that happen? It happens because there is some chittagata, something which is very much in your mind, chittagata sanskara vishesha. There is some old impression, there is some old experience. That is what is triggering this new craving again for that particular thing. It could be a cricket match, it could be anything, right? It's a repetition of a particular way of you having sought to experience something is happening again. That is sanskara vishesho vasana. So generally vasana we connect with the future because you have a desire to have something. But he's saying this desire doesn't fall from the heaven. This is essentially a repetition of a subtle impression which is hiding in your subconscious mind, vasana. Purva purva abhyasena chitte vasyamanyatvad. Because this guy, this vasana, this particular devil, or that particular devil, let's use that word, is hiding in your consciousness because you have repeatedly played that game. You have allowed it some space in your mind, and therefore it has found a home in you. It's not going to go, because whenever it appears, you give it a chocolate. How do you give it a chocolate? How do you bribe it? Because you fulfill what it wants from you. So whether it's going to a mall or making a purchase, or you know taking any kind of food or anything, food or drink or whatever, okay, that particular desire, you have allowed that desire to come and make a demand. You have fulfilled it, so it appears again, expecting that you will pay good attention to it. Okay, chitte vasyamanatvad. Vasyamana means what? Vas. It kind of, it is kind of living in you. It has a space to survive in you. It dwells in you. It has a dwelling place in you, and therefore it is kind of a sanskara vishesha. Okay, now we will discuss what is vasanakshaya, and he explains it. Vasanakshyo nama viveka janyayam. How that vasanakshaya will happen? You have to bring in some viveka, discrimination. Why am I doing this? The reconstruction of the mind starts with questioning. Why am I doing it? So there is some addiction counseling. They say, okay, do you know what have you lost in life by doing this? Why do you drink? Why do you get angry with your family members? And people don't talk to you. You have lost your self-respect. Don't you feel bad about it? They do some counseling. Sheo nama viveka janyayam chitta prasama vasanayam dridhayam satyapi bahyo nimitte krodhadi anutpattihi. Now, when you have vasanakshaya, imagine that you have already trimmed your vasanas. You have trimmed your vasana, let's imagine, for a drink, or for going for a film, or for sweets. Now you have diabetes. Doctor has said you shouldn't take sweets. Viveka janyayam. So now you have a discriminating mind. You have trained yourself that I will think logically. I should do something what is shreya, what is good for me, not what is preya, what is pleasant to me, but what is good for me. I'll do that. And then Pitta Prasama Vasanayam, this mind has become peaceful, and therefore the Vasana, or the desire part, has become diluted, weakened. Dridhayam Satyapi Bahyo Nimitte Krodhadi Anutpatihi. So what happens is that when that sort of a thing happens, what he's saying is that when this Bahya Nimitta, if the nimitta is not there, so you avoid going to that particular lane where there are a couple of shops where you can buy alcohol, or you can buy sweets, or there's a film hall. You avoid that area. And you simultaneously are doing logical analysis as to why you should not have that desire. This is the whole de-addiction regime. Then after some time, when the vasanas are not there, the mind also doesn't think about it. So he's saying, if you succeed in doing vasanakshaya, after some time, even if you see that liquor shop, or that sweet shop, or that film hall, you may not be tempted because the vasana has been trimmed. And when you are disciplined yourself like that, you have dealt with your consciousness like that, mononasa can happen easily. The mind can be pacified. The mind can be quietened. You can tranquilize the mind without tranquilizers. The greatest tranquilizers is Tattva Darsana, Tattva Jnana, Manonasa. These are the techniques. Here, the greatest tranquilizer for a restless mind is to meditate on the truth and to do breathing exercises and some yogic practices to sort of provide an antidote to some kind of poisonous impression of the past which is still dwelling in us. Tatra tattva jnana sati mithya bhute jagati. When you have tattva jnana, what is that tattva jnana? Please remember again. That aham brahmasmi iti. That all this samsara is essentially mithya, even though it's phenomenally true, fundamentally not true. What is real? Me as an existence and this whole jagat as an existence is fundamentally one unified reality. That is tattva jnana. Once you have that tattva jnana sati, how does this world appear? Mithya bhuta jagati. This jagat is mithya bhuta, fundamentally flawed, twisted, obtuse, not to be taken seriously. Nara visanadau iva dhi vritti anudayat. Now, there is this example always given in Vedanta that there is some payasam, some milk rice is served to you, some dessert. And then imagine that this dessert, which was about to be served to you, a fly has fallen in it, dead fly. Will you eat it? Or imagine that somebody has mixed some poison in it. You know it has been poisoned. If I say taste it, you are hungry, you have not eaten for 2 days. Would you take this milk rice? No. You will destroy it because you know when any animal takes it, that animal or bird will die. So you will destroy it. Similarly, this particular thing, this Nara Vishana Dau Iva. Nara Vishana means, do we have horns? No, we don't have horns. Now, if someone says, have you seen that this fellow has very long horns, like, like antelopes? Would you look at a person's top of his head to figure out how big are his horns? No, you will not. Because you will not have any prabriti, you will not have any inclination to find out about the existence of such a thing because it is fundamentally false. Same way, you shall lose interest in the samsara. Phenomenally, everything is fine, but that craving or running after, that will become santa, that will become pacified. You will not have that craving because of this knowledge that is fundamentally flawed. Dhivritti anudaya, this mental formation, shall not emerge in you, shall not appear. Then what happens? Atmanasta drishtatvane punarvritti anupayogat. And then, because what is the need for then the mind to engage in anything? Because the craving is not there, vasana khay has happened, and therefore what happens? Punarvritti anupayogat nirindhana agnivan mano nashyati. Now there is a lamp and there are some wood pieces, small wood pieces you put into that oven, traditional Indian oven. The fire keeps burning, you cook. Now if you remove the wood gets burnt. You don't put in any new wood into it. Will the fire stay? No. It will diminish and it will perish finally. Similarly, the indhana is the desire and your craving. When you reduce the vasanas you are withdrawing, because of tattva jnana, you don't have any attachment to the external reality. Then how can the mind run around? Because you have fundamentally denied it any significance. And therefore, it loses the battle. It dies. It's a poor person. It's like you have starved a person to death. Same way you are starving your jumping around monkey called the mind, which you have, which once becomes Viveka Yukta, becomes your best friend. That we already know. Without Viveka, worst enemy. With Viveka, best friend. That is what mind is all about. We have already studied that before. So he's saying that manonasa bhavati. Okay? Then, nastecha manasi. And when the mind has been destroyed or pacified or nullified or put to silence like this, sanskar udbodhokasya, and which creates sanskara's impression in us, certain external objects of perception. Bahyasya nimittasya apratito vasana khyate. And if you have pacified your mind like that, and then maintain some physical distance from those objects which might trigger old emotions in you. Okay, so what is the advice by your friends? Yeah, I mean, this happens, right? So you advise your friends. So he went to a club and he had a fight with somebody, and that guy is going to come. So if this friend of yours goes, he might pick up an argument and they may have a fight. So what do the friends tell? No, no, we are not going to the club. Let's go somewhere else. We had a fight yesterday. So you want to avoid that situation where the same set of emotions may get re-triggered in you, right? Now here, with Tattva Jnana, Vasana Kshaya, the desire have been trimmed. And then the external causes, the external nimitta, the factors for driving the repetition of that same mental formation are absent. Then what happens? Then it's very simple, vasana khyate, because the external thing is there. No more craving. Okay. Shinayam, you see, he's now showing why am I reading this and why is he saying all that. He's trying to establish the mutual interrelatedness of these three things: mononasa, tattva and vasanakshaya. And therefore, these things cannot be practiced in isolation from each other. The yogic people say you try to do mononasa, but they also say vasanakya, you have to start it. They don't. They also mention tattva that the purusha prakriti viveka khyati you have to have. They also mention that these three are interrelated but overemphasized in a rightful way in Vedanta, saying that you cannot only do tattva without mononasa. And you cannot do only mononasa without tattvajnana. It will not be stable. It will not be sustainable for a long time. Okay? And without vasana care, somewhere or the other, desires will creep in and the whole vicious cycle will start again. You want to replace that with a virtuous cycle, you have to simultaneously practice all three. Okay? Kshinayam vasanayam hitva havena. And because these vasanas, they don't have any cause and therefore they become very thin. Krodhadi vritti anudayat mano nasyati. Again, beautifully. Now, vasana kya again leads to mononasa. How? Vasana is there, then vasana means desire. And when you have, because vasana is the root cause of all the sudden appearance of aversion or attachment, right? Krodhadi utpati, manobhiti utpati. But the cause has been removed, which is desire, and therefore the mind will not experience extreme emotions of elation or depression, attraction or aversion. It will not experience it. Then what happens? Anadayat manonasyati, the mind becomes peaceful. There is no turmoil, it's free from turmoil. So again, it will have mononasa. So vasanakya leads to mononasa. Nastecha manasi. Then, when the mind has been destroyed, samadhamadi sampatya. What are the benefits? You have a certain privileges by now. What is that? Mono nigraha, sama, dhamma, indriya nigraha. These are things you have already done. You have controlled your senses. You have controlled the mental modifications. Because you have done that, manasi samadhamadi sampatya tattva jnana udeti. See, again, you have another beautiful thing is coming. Because when you do vasana kshaya and mononasa, you have removed the rice from inside the pot. What is there inside? Pure space. When you do mononasa in vasana kshaya, when you put an end to the desires and put an end to the mental modifications, you are in a state of pure transparent consciousness. That mind is most eligible, most capable, and can potentially quickly experience, by its very nature, its direct experience of the truth or direct experience of the self. Tattvajnana udeti. Tattvajnana appears. Self-realization happens. Evam utpanne tattvajnane raga dvesadi rupa vasana khyate. You see, one level of tattvajnana leads to further thinning down of vasana. So you have tattvajnana now. So what do you see? The samsara is completely false. And what is true? Only thing is true is the self. Will you have any reappearance of vasana? Whatever little thin, tiny manifestation of vasana that can ever happen in you, they become samula nasa. With their roots, they are uprooted, these desires. Shinayam cha vasanayam pratibandha bhavat. And then, because the vasanas are kind of obstructions, these vasanas are obstructions for pacifying the mind. With Tattva Jnana, your desires have become further thinner, almost nil. Then what happens to your mind? It's perfectly happy. There is nothing to pursue. There is nothing to run around for because there are no desires. Vasanayang pratibandha bhavat tattva jnanodaya iti paraspara karanatvam darshaniyam. So there is paraspara karanatvam. Each one is a cause of the other. So what did we study? If you just make it for your own reference, you make a triangle, and at the angles you mention, one is Tattva Jnana, at another corner you put Vasanachaya, another you put Manonasa. And then you'll see each one is dialectically interrelated. It causes the other, is benefited by the other. Then why, how can it happen? Because these are kind of mutually reinforcing. How does it work? Okay, you start somewhere. You start with Viveka because you don't have Tattva Jnana. Viveka Vairagya, you have to start there. Then you start doing Vasana Kya and then Manonasa, then Tattva Jnana. Then, it's like spirals, okay? You're going to higher level of Manonasa and Vasana Kya and Tattva Jnana. So they'll become thinner and thinner. So you'll have a kind of, this particular spiral in the perimeter of it will become smaller and smaller, and there'll be just one point at the top. Okay, that is how it will happen. Ata eva Bhagavan Vasishta aha. So now he's quoting from Yoga Vasishta. Tattva Jnanam Manunasa Vasana Kya evacha mitha karanatam gatva dussadhyani stitanihi tasmat raghava yatnena paurushena vivekina bhogecham duratastyakva trayam etat samasraya. O Raghava, O dear friend Ramachandra, my handsome, bright student, please take note of it, that Tattva Jnana, Manonasa, and Vasanachaya. Self-realization, understanding of the truth, pacifying the mind, and, tranquilizing your desires. Mitha karanatam gatva, they are causes that they cause each other. There's a causal, there is an interdependence, there's a causal relation between each other. Mitha means parasvara, karanatam gatva, dusadhyani stitanihi, and therefore, how do you actually manage to control them? If you lose attention on one, the other two, and that will trouble the other two, because they are mutually reinforcing and mutually supportive. Tasmat raghava yatnena, so be careful. You have to be very, very careful. Yatnena paurushena vivekina, apply your paurusha, that purushartha, that Karna said, okay, bhagya is fine, that's not in my hand. But paurusha is in my hand. Paurushakara vritti, that I'll do it with willpower. Paurushena vivekina. So you need willpower and you need discrimination. Bhogecham duratah tattva. So this desire for pleasure, you discard it from a long distance, because anywhere you go close, you lose the battle. Yaktva trayam etat samasraya. Please take refuge in these three virtues: Manonasa, Vasanakshaya, and Tattva Jnana. Samasraya. Samyak prakarena ashraya. Take refuge in them. Practice them. Okay? And with lot of effort. So we stop here. We have hit the timeline, and we will continue our discussion tomorrow. Any questions? Does anyone have any questions, please? Oh, okay, then I'm stopping the YouTube thing, and we'll do the Santi Mantras.